Alright, so we're going to take this into Keyshot. And so the way we do that is we take the items that we want, still have the materials on them. The lighting isn't necessary, the cameras aren't necessary, the background floor aren't necessary, because all of these things here are things that we'll create inside of Keyshot. Really, we just need the models with their materials on them. Okay, so I have my 3 models labeled. I'm going to make sure they're all smoothed out. I've hit C on all of these. I'm going to go to, oh, they're not in groups, so everything is just right there. The orientation is where I want them, makes it easier. Then I'm going to export these as FBX. So I'm going to say product export demo. Now these are FBX. I believe those should go in there fine. We'll see. So I'm going to hit save, selection only. Everything else should be good. Textures and materials. I didn't need cameras or splines or instances or any of this stuff. That should be good. Kesha, yeah, look up Kesha. So at the college where you have Keyshot 8, the same thing will apply for Keyshot 7 and so on. You can download this on your home computer, but you'll get a warning or a trademark, red line, watermark every time you render it out. And it's not, you can't bring it back into the lab after that. So only do this inside the lab. So the interface is pretty straightforward. Let me close these. Down here are your buttons. So import, let's import our stuff. I'll go to my scene, go to my product export, demo FBX. It's going to center the geometry, snap it to the ground, bring in all my other items, hit import. So depending on the size of your stuff, it might take longer to do. This program is pretty simple. You could learn most of the stuff about it, you know, all the major things about it, within an afternoon. There's a lot you can do with it. There's a lot of tweaking, but the interface is so open as far as just texturing and materials and all that, that it's very friendly. I'm going to pause this while it's loading. Alright, so after a few minutes it came in. Next button is library. These are things that are inside of Keyshot, not necessarily things we're using. Project, this is stuff that's inside Keyshot and stuff that we're using. So, tabs are on top, same thing as materials, color, textures, right? If I go to scene, here's my product export, here's my root, and then here's my 3 items. So, eyeballs, turn them on and off. There's my camera. To navigate in here, left mouse button drags me around. Middle mouse button moves it up and down. Scroll wheel zooms in and out. Something I commonly do is I accidentally right click and I say show only. You might do it too. If you do it too, you just right click again and say show all parts. Everything comes back. Okay, so let's play around. Under materials, here's the materials that we have. So if I go to my conditioner bottle, just double click it, this is the kind of material that it is. Right now it's just giving us a color, so there's no specular. So I'm going to choose from this list. I want this to be plastic. And you'll see it's rendering this in real time. Double click this one, plastic. Double click this one, plastic. Okay. So that's pretty good. Like, that's already like a lot better than, you know, all the screwing around we did inside of Cinema. This is already like a lot quicker, a lot better, or a lot faster. Oh, that was right. A lot quicker, a lot better. So you can adjust other things here, like you can play with the color. You can blend it with a color, just like we were doing inside of Cinema. If you want to give it a tint, you can do that. Give the specular a different color, play with the roughness. Maybe you want it like that. You can also double click the items out here and adjust them from there. Now, The next one is environment. So this comes with an environment. So if we were to look around, you'll see we kind of have this like 360 environment here. And even though we're here, it looks like we can see underneath, there's nothing there. There is a ground, right? This environment is this HDR image. And if I come over here to environments, these are all the different environments you can add to this scene. So for this project, we'll stick to the studio ones, which are these black and white ones. And you can just drag one, drop it into here, and now your scene will be lit completely different. So we're not actually adding lights into the scene, we're adding a different HDR, and that HDR is what's lighting up our scene. So I actually liked this one. I thought this one turned out pretty good. You'll see there's actually like lights inside the image, and that's what's causing it to be lit up. And as we move around our scene, we can adjust where that light is coming from. Yeah, this gives us a little bit different of a look to it. We still get the one on this side and the one on this side and some stuff in the middle. But as quick as this is, you can just kind of jump around and see which one you're going to like best for your shot. Like I said, I kind of like that 3.1 the best. 3 panels tilted. That was the one I liked. You can also adjust them. So over here, these little dots, if you wanted to move one, you can just click it and adjust where it's coming from. Okay, same thing down here with their like reflection. I'm going to see a huge difference with these ones. Oh, I do see something. I'm going to scroll down. We can also go to rotation and rotate the lights around. So if we wanted to find a better angle for our stuff. Okay, I actually like the default of 0 was pretty good. Okay, we can adjust the brightness. So if it's a little bit dark, 1.5, 2, there we go. Let's say you don't want to see the environment. This is kind of ugly, so we can just hit color. And now we just have a color. And you can pick whatever color you want. And there it is. If you wanted a ground plane, you can go to Edit, Add, Ground Plane. Now there's a ground plane. Now it doesn't have a material on there, or it doesn't have a material adjusted. So if I go to my materials now, you'll see there's a ground. And let's take the specular up to white. Take the roughness down. And now we have this kind of like wet looking ground casting or reflecting our items, which is pretty good. This item looks like it might be floating a little bit. If anything needs to be adjusted, I can jump back to the scene, jump back to my body lotion, and there is a move tool up here. And now we can just drag this down. Now this will be the hard part because it kind of pixelates and then does it. I just hit the check box when I'm done. Okay, cool. Ground shadows. When I turn the other ground on, this kind of negates it, so that doesn't do anything. Lighting. This is the settings for what the lighting is set up like. If I set it to performance mode, you'll see we don't get the same reflections. I set it to basic, we're getting some. Product will get some more features, and so on. Here's our camera. So some things we may want is depth of field. We may do stereoscopic. We may do some animation. And then here's our image. I'm also going to set this to the size. So pad. So an 8 by 10 at 300 dpi. Is 2400 pixels by 3000 pixels. So I can't put that number into here. It's kind of silly how it works, but it just doesn't like it. So I'm going to go with, let's say, a division of this. So if I did 240 by 300, this is still the same proportions as this one, but this is too small. So I'm just going to double that and do that. Okay. So I'm going to unlock, unlink, 480. I'm trying. Oops, by 600, not 360. There we go. Now I can link, now I can lock, and now it won't freak out. Okay, cool. You can also adjust things like you can add a bloom to this. So bloom is going to allow us to add a little bit of a bright spot where we have specularity that's like super bright. All right, let me go back to my lighting. Oh, my environment, and I'm just going to crank up the intensity of this. There we go. Now we'll go back to the image. There we go. So we can see the bloom. There it goes. I just had to make it a lot bigger. We can see the bloom happening on here. Okay. Usually if you have something with a lot of contrast, it works out much better than obviously this one, which is, it has some contrast, it has some difference, but not much. There's a vignette. We're not really seeing a whole lot here. There's chromatic aberration, which again is not anything we need to worry about right now. Over here we can go to backdrops, and you can bring in other environments. So I didn't like this plain black. I thought this, where'd it go? Studio, there it is. Studio backdrop. Again, just drop it in. Now it did reset my camera, so let me just undo that. Oh, it reset my camera because it doesn't fit. It's very weird. Go back to environment. There's my background. Yeah, so I'd have to make a different one. I guess I didn't really have that. The other one was kind of cut off, but if I was going horizontal, definitely I could. But it doesn't like it otherwise, so I'll stick with the color, stick with the ground. That's good. All right, so other stuff we might need. Let's pretend one of these is glass. Double click that. And I can just change this to glass. And I can change this to glass solid. And then pick my color. And now you can see it's looking like glass. Okay. Again, it's very easy just to go through and play with these things. All the textures are loaded through here. So textures, there's the diffuse, there's the folder. It's being laid out with UVs. Here's the size and mapping. You can adjust the brightness of your textures. So if something did come in a little bit too bright, you can always knock it down. Like this one may be a little bit too bright. And then this one is maybe a little bit too dark. There we go. So a little bit closer. Cool. Let's pretend that we're ready to render this out. So my camera's locked in. Everything is set up. I would go under render, go to render, and then inside here I would give this a name. Sarcona, render, and then .1.psd. Put this into my correct folder. So it's going to go into the default Keyshot folder, which is not your folder. There we go. I saved this as a PSD 32-bit. Yes. I also do all render layers, and then I say add to PSD. And what this does is it takes all of your passes here and makes it into a PSD that you can then tweak. It's a much simpler process. That's good. Some of these we don't need. I'll just point out the ones we do need or do want. So we want the ambient occlusion. We do want a clown pass, and we do want, there's no caustics in this scene. These ones. So I don't need depth. I don't need labels. I'll do it anyway, just so you can see what they do. I'll do all of these, but you don't typically need all of them. Normals we don't need, depth we don't need. caustics. I don't have any caustics in the scene, but everything else I would turn on. Under options, here's your resolution, not your resolution, but your quality settings. So the higher this number is, the better the quality. So 64 will give you 64. I accidentally hit render, I think. No, I didn't. 256, 128. Okay, so 128 seems like a good number. I got a pretty clean render at that. Under output, this is the size, so 800 by 1000. We'd want this to be 2400 by 3000, and then we would hit render. And then what this does is it's going to go through and render it out and save it. You can see it's thinking, it's chugging, doing its thing. If you load in the wrong geometry, the easiest thing to do is just make a new scene and then drop in the right geometry. If you're adding more stuff, you can import more things on top of it. Let me stop this render. I don't need it to actually render out because I already have this rendered. This is the window that's coming up. It's going to render it, and at the top it'll eventually say that it's done. This little red check mark on the left will turn into a green, or red X on the top left will turn into a green check mark. I'm just going to hit stop. So it's freezing up because I have so much stuff going on. Okay, I'll just save that, sure. So I'm going to open up what it would look like after you render it. And while I'm doing that, let me save my Keyshot stuff. So when it saves, it'll say, do you want to save it as a package or just save? Because I have textures, I can actually bunch everything up. So typically if you're like done with it, save it as a package. Or if you're copying it to another computer, save it as a package. But otherwise, I'm just going to hit save. And Keyshot product. And then close it. Alright, so this is what my Keyshot product came in as. Just this. And then it has this render passes folder. Now inside here, it has some other things that I'm just going to, well, I'll leave them in there. You guys should know what those are. Okay. So obviously with this one, it's a bit more complex of a scene. So Clown Pass is just solid colors, easy way for you to select stuff. So if you needed to do a color range or a marquee, you could do that. Alright, so typically this would let you do a magic wand or a selection or a color range or something. In this case, in Photoshop, it doesn't let you do that because those are 8-bit tools, and the image we got out was a 32-bit. So if you wanted to do any of those things, you would take your channels to 8 bits, don't merge, and then you would be able to go here and do a selection. And then if you wanted to, let's say, adjust this item, you could go here, do whatever, and it would be, you know, obviously masked perfectly to that item. When you get into later 3D classes, we go into a software called Nuke, which allows us to use more of those 32-bit things in a more easier fashion. Let's put it that way. Okay, here is the label one. There's nothing on this label one. Okay, here is my ambient occlusion. That's what it looks like. Now this is originally what it looked like. I put a levels on it. Okay, just inside here as a adjustment layer. That way it can be a bit darker. Let me show you what that's going to look like. I'll turn off all these other ones for a second. So I set my ambient occlusion to multiply. And if I turn this off, turn this on, you can see the difference right here. I kind of lose some of that line work, and that just pops it back in. It's beautiful. The next one I have is shadows. So again, I took this and added it to multiply. This is what it looks like normally. Turn that off, like this. And I just set it to multiply. You'll see how it kind of darkens some of the scene. It gives it a little more contrast to it, a little more depth, and that's the reason I use that. And then I add the levels to it just so I can control where that's coming in at. Where is my darkest spot? Where is my lightest spots? Okay, you can see I can enhance the shadows tremendously just by playing with those. Some other ones we have is reflection. So this is showing me where everything's reflecting. Didn't use that for anything. This is, sorry, refraction. This is reflection. This is caustic. There's nothing there. This is global illumination. That. I did add this as a linear dodge. And just adds a little bit of pop to those logos. Some of these I'll change the mode. Just try to find something that enhances it. And then adjust the opacity if needed. Okay. This is lighting. Didn't use that. This is diffuse. Didn't use that. These are the normals. Don't worry about those. This is the depth. And that's it. Okay. So just like our hologram ones, you can do a lot of stuff obviously inside Photoshop. The depth of field that I have here on this was done inside of Keyshot. I didn't get into it obviously, but it's something you could do in there if you had the right scene. This splash that's here too, I also used a program called RealFlow. And RealFlow allows you to make these kinds of splashes like that, like that, like that. My thought was to originally go over that, but just based on time and based on the length of time it takes to do just some simple ones, it was a lot more involved than I wanted to get into. Okay, but just be aware that these things are out there for you to play with. There's all my stuff there. Yeah, very cool. It looks pretty neat. So when you turn these in, go into Photoshop, tweak them, modify them, make them look better than the default render. Okay, you can see the changes I did are subtle, but that's all it took. Okay, even going into the very top of this and doing, let's say, an adjustment curves, could really help this thing pop a bit more. You can see a lot of grays, a lot more black. Doing a vignette, just like we've talked about on the other ones. All right, so I'm just kind of hitting the corners. There we go. Okay, so save it as a PSD. I want to see your layers and see what you've done to it. And then also save it as a JPEG, so I have something easy to open up and save. So I have one called Sarcona Product Rendering JPEG, and then I also have a PSD, which is Sarcona Product Rendering PSD. Go ahead and save that. So you'll turn obviously that in, you'll turn in your cinema file, you'll turn in your images, your textures, your reference images, your research, the whole shebango. Make sure your stuff is nice and organized. And that'll wrap us up with the product.